Now, for the session on torture, I will call first Mr. Mehmet Alp.
Dear President, members, participants, hello to everyone. My name is Mehmet Alp. I was born in 1977 in Turkey, in Kütahya. I went to primary school and secondary school in Kütahya, and then I went to high school in Istanbul, and then to university I went to Bursa and I studied chemistry there. I did my master's in Cyprus. I did my doctorate in Turkey at the university in Gaziantep. And at the same time, I continued to work as a chemistry teacher for the Ministry of Education of the Turkish Republic. So it's about a year ago that my story begins. On the 18th of April, 2015, I was in Cizre, in southeastern Turkey. I was working as a teacher there, and I was forcibly abducted there. Later on, my wife was taken under custody. She was left free. She was released after 4 days. And then I was taken under custody in Urfa a while later, a month before the failed coup. Later, I was arrested, and I was put into Sincan, and I was said to be guilty of falsification and of swindling, but there was no proof against me. So I was in prison during the coup, and of course, on the 28th of May 2017, I was forcibly taken out of prison, and I was taken to the prison of Şanlıurfa, which is 600 kilometers away from Cizre. And for 24 days, I was tortured. I was once again arrested, and I was placed in prison. And on 4th of April 2020, I was released. And understanding that I couldn't do anything to prove my innocence in Turkey, I left Turkey and I sought refuge in Germany. So, unfortunately, there are many academicians, bureaucrats, innocent people in prison in Turkey, just like I was, and I accepted to come here today to be their voice. I would like to tell you about my experiments there. So, if I have to go into more detail, here's what I'd like to say. So I was a teacher in Cizre. Cizre is in the Kurdish region. It's a region where Kurdish people are in the majority. I'm from Kütahya. I'm Turkish. And my family was a conservative, nationalist family, a patriotic family, and so am I. But in Cizre, I experienced certain things. On 18th of April, 2015, I took my child to a school for some school activities, and then I went into town. And while I was in town, a car stopped right next to me. I thought it was some friends of mine, so I stopped as well. And someone who came from behind me forcibly took me into the car. And then they took me outside of Cizre, towards Habur, towards the Syrian border. I suppose we drove for 30 or 40 minutes. On the road, they told me that they were policemen, but they didn't show me any proof of identity. They may have been policemen or MIT, the Turkish Intelligence Service. I don't know. They were very polite with me to start with. They said, you have 4 students. I don't want to give you their name, but I can give you one of their names. Medina Gökdemir, a female student of mine, was said to have joined the PKK. And they told me that these 4 students attended the Gülen movement's after-school classes, but that they also joined the PKK, and that Gülen and the PKK worked together, and that there was a huge terrorist organization. And they asked me to accept this. I said, I don't know anything about this. I've never heard of this, so I can't help you. And if this is an investigation, then we should go to the police station. And that's where I will accept to give you any information, but I have no information. And then, of course, they started to become less polite. They said, you're going to have problems, but if you accept this problem, then you won't have any problems. Soon in Turkey, there is going to be an explosion. If you don't want any problems, if you want to think about your family, if you want to take care of your children, then you have to do as we say. But when I didn't accept, this time they started to insult me. Right now, I have too much respect for you, so I wouldn't like to repeat what they said, which insults they used, but they were very heavy insults. So there was a policeman in front of me, behind me, another next to me, and the one who was next to me took a pistol against my head and said, if you want to continue living, then you have to accept what we're telling you. And I said, well, I don't know anything. How can I accept what I don't know? Of course, I was really afraid, and as I'm telling you right now, I'm afraid again. So I started to pray. I thought I was going to die. They said, if we kill you now, if tomorrow the police were to find your lifeless body, nobody could say anything because this is a terrorist area anyways. No one would do any research into your murder. So I started to cry. There was nothing else for me to do. They stopped putting pressure on me and they let me go. So they let me go there on the road, and I started to hitchhike, but nobody stopped, of course. Finally, a truck stopped, and I went back to Cizre. But once at Cizre, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my family because I was afraid. So this happened on the 18th of April, 2015. On the 20th of April, 2015, the policemen came to my house. They took my wife under custody. She was taken to Ankara for 4 days. She was finally released. She came back to Cizre. And then the peace process between the PKK and the government had come to an end, and the armed conflicts began again. And we told the authorities that we were afraid for our lives. We told them that my wife could no longer leave the house to go and sign the papers that she needed to sign after she would be released from custody, but they didn't accept this. Finally, we were posted to the city of Şanlıurfa, and we were finally released from this problematic situation in Cizre. Once we arrived in Urfa, on the 13th of May, 2016, policemen arrived at our home again. I would like to say this as well. I draw as well as being an academician, and so I drew everything that I lived through here. So while I was imprisoned, I kept a diary of 4 volumes, and I also drew pictures, and I put this in my files. And here you can see one of them. They're a nice memory. And so I brought them here so you can see them. 1 month before the coup in 2016, I was arrested, and they asked me whether I had anything to do with the Gülen movement. They asked if my wife had anything to do with them. They asked me why I sent my children to Gülen schools. But there was nothing to do for the reason for which I'd been imprisoned, which was, as I said, falsification and swindling. Well, I was arrested and I was put in prison. And then the coup happened on the 15th of June, 2015. But I was in prison. On the 14th of July, we started to hear rumors that 2,500 prosecutors and judges would be imprisoned and brought to our jail. I asked, but how? How could 2,500 judges and prosecutors be imprisoned? We heard these rumors on the 14th of July, and then on the 15th of July, we heard about this coup. And that night, we had only 11 people in our cell. We went up to 20 people, if I remember correctly. There were academicians and bureaucrats and teachers in our cells. In the other cells, there were CEOs, high-level bureaucrats. And 2 days after the coup, we were taken from Sinjan L-type prison to T-type prison. But we weren't allowed to take anything, not our clothes, not our books, nothing. Not any cutlery, nothing. We were taken to a cell, an empty cell, without beds, without covers, nothing. For 2 months, we weren't able to eat any vegetables or fruit. We weren't able to see a doctor. We wrote complaints, but we couldn't get any answers, so none of us could see a doctor. Later on, we learned that around 2,500 prosecutors and judges had been in prison and put into where we had been before, Sinjan T-type jail. Well, of course, after all the stress, I started having digestive problems in my intestines, and I started having internal bleeding. And despite the fact that while in jail, I asked to see a doctor, despite the fact that I pushed the red emergency button, no one came. Finally, someone came. I said, I'm in pain. I'm bleeding. I can't eat. I'm in a very bad situation. I really need a doctor. And I was told that I was a member of the FETÖ terrorist group, that I was a Gülenist, and that they'd received orders not to take care of me. I said, well, then give me a document saying that you're not taking care of me, that you're not taking medical care of me, because I'm in real trouble here. Now, this could be worse. But for 2 months, they didn't take care of us. Later on, I was taken to a hospital after 2 months. And I was told that I had a beginning of intestinal cancer. And of course, I had to take a lot of medication. Later, in November, I was taken from Sinjan to Keskin T, another jail, and I was given no reason for why I was being transferred. I think I've been through 4 jails and 17 cells. And I was put in solitary in this new jail. And while I was there, on the 28th of May, 2017, a police officer came and said, okay, you have to get out of solitary because you're going to appear before court, so come out. And I said, no, there's still a week to go before I appear before court. And they said, no, you have to come out. And I said, no, I don't want to come out. Because I was thinking of bad things, because after the 15th of July, there were many people who were tortured. But then I was like, this is a state where still there's rule of law. It's not easy to torture someone. That's what was going through my mind. But they forcibly took me out of my cell. And then they took me out of the prison. And 2 people came and handcuffed me and put me on the ground and took me 200 kilometers away to Şanlıurfa. On the 28th of May, they asked me whether I had fulfilled any functions during the coup of the 15th of July. Well, no, I said. On the 15th of July, I was in jail. I'm a student. I'm not a member of the military. I can't be meddled in anything like this. They said, no, we know that you were involved. We're going to give you some documents which you're going to sign. I said, I don't know what these documents are. Give me these documents. Let me read them first. They refused to give me the documents, so I don't know what they were about. And that night, since I refused to sign these documents, that evening, they put a sack over my head. They handcuffed me with plastic behind my back, and they took me to a dark room underneath the prison. And they said, okay, the police officers left me alone. They said, okay, we're leaving you with these people, and they're going to ask you some questions. So they turned me against the wall. They put me on the floor. I suppose there were a few people in the room. I had a sack over my head. I don't know how many people there were. And they had metallic things in their hand. And they said, we know that you're involved with the 15th of July coup. You won't get out of here alive if you don't help us. But once I told them that I wasn't involved, they started to hit me over the head, over the body. I fell. I'm trying to get back up. I said, no, there's a misunderstanding. I'm a teacher. I'm not involved in any of this. Finally, I remember I started bleeding from my nose, and then I fainted. Then I was placed in a van, and they took me to the hospital of Şanlıurfa. a doctor arrived while I was in the van, and they looked at me from outside. He looked at me from outside, and he asked me what was wrong with me. But while we were on the way, the policeman told me that if I told anyone that I'd been tortured, they would bring me back and they'd torture me again. So, as I told you, I'm a cancer patient. I also have high tension. I started having arrhythmia. I'm under 4 drugs. So I was afraid. So they took me back, and for 24 days I was tortured. I met many academicians who were tortured. I thought, I'm never going to make it out of here alive. What should I do? So during questioning, let me show you. So when I was placed in the room of Tim, I found a pencil, and I broke it, and then I found some toilet paper. And I put the pencil at the edge of this paper, and I made a pencil out of it for myself. And I made some paper as well, like this. And I started to write down everything that I've been living through every day, because I thought I would never make it out alive. And I kept all this. I put these little notebooks in my shoe. I wanted to see my lawyer. I asked to see my lawyer, but they wouldn't allow me. I said I wanted to see my wife. I wanted to tell my wife I'm under custody, but they didn't allow me to. And then on the 6th of June, I was supposed to appear before court. So from 28th of May till July, I was placed under torture every day. Finally, I was able to go to court. So the policeman who tortured me told me, if in court you tell anyone you were tortured, then you'll undergo the same things. But I was afraid for my family. They said, we won't only torture you, we'll torture also your wife and your family, and your children will go to adoption homes. So if you say that you love your family, then don't tell the court that you were tortured. So they gave an envelope to the judge, and they told him to release me. They said that I would be released afterwards. And there they say that they have a euphemism for torture. They call it an operation, as a medical operation. They say, if you do anything wrong, we'll operate on you again. So the day I was released, actually, conditionally, they also told me that I was guilty of being involved in the 15th of July coup. But then I was imprisoned again. I was arrested again. Again, I had to appear before court. Again, the policemen who tortured me were in court, and they made me sign a document saying that it was my own responsibility that I hadn't taken my medication. But I changed my signature, and I met with an academician who had been tortured with electricity. He had ecchymosis everywhere. One of his ears he was deaf in one of his ears. He said, I have to get out of here alive, I said. I have to get out of here alive to continue my fight for everyone, for freedom and justice. And I said, I want my own lawyer. They said, no, you can't have your own lawyer. If you don't sign these documents that we ask you to sign, then you won't leave here alive. I said, but you're a lawyer. You have to defend me. How can you say anything like this? But unfortunately, no one supported me. And together with this lawyer that had been assigned to me by the state, well, I was still tortured. Finally, I was able to see my own lawyer. My wife had learned that I was in this prison in Urfa, and my wife came together with my own lawyer. And once she entered, I thought that they'd brought my wife to threaten her. I thought that they were going to threaten her with torture, with imprisonment, with rape. So I asked my wife not to come very often. I said, maybe you should. I asked my wife, together with her own lawyer, to go and see some human rights organizations. And so she went to the Turkish Parliament's Committee on Human Rights. She went to speak with some politicians. She went to the bar of Urfa. She went to some other political parties and some journalists and told them about what I was going through. But on the 4th of April, I was again released unconditionally. But I understood that my problems were never going to end. So together with my wife and children, we escaped the country and sought refuge in Germany. And that's where we're continuing our struggle. Thank you.
Testimony. Now I will turn to the judges for a question time, and maybe we'll start with Justice Space, if we can have him on video.
Mr. Alp, thank you very much for coming to us. Did you, did anything ever happen to the original accusation that you were charged with some form of forgery or what you called cheating at any time? Was there any follow-up to that during all these stages?
Ya tekrar geri dönülmedi.
No. I never heard about this again. They changed the complaint about me. So in the beginning, as I said, it was falsification. But later on, this became a membership of an armed organization. And then it became involvement in the failed coup. And they never again talked about the first complaint. So right now, the main complaint is that I'm a member of a terrorist organization, and nothing has been done about that either. It hasn't been finalized.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge Bianco.
Thank you, Madam President. A question. After you were released, did you speak with your lawyer, your own lawyer, about any possibility of presenting a kind of claim or prosecution, either criminal or civil, for the acts of torture? And what did your lawyer tell you about this? Did you consider kind of any legal claim in relation to the acts you're victim of?
My lawyer and my wife went to the prosecutor, and they told them about the situation. And later on, I did give a document to the judges about what had happened as well, to the courts. But unfortunately, nothing happened. The police, the prosecutor, the court, unfortunately, work together. There's no way that you can maintain a struggle, a judiciary struggle there in Turkey. So people saw me after I'd been tortured. They were afraid of how I'd been seen. But as I said, I wrote many documents while I was imprisoned. I wrote to courts. I told them what I'd been through. I gave them my diaries where they could read what had been happened to me every day. But unfortunately, nothing happened. There was no follow-through. And there are many people this has happened to me, that happened to other people. Many people have undergone torture in Urfa and in Ankara, but they've never been able to tell anyone. I mean, they have told people, but nothing has ever happened. There's nothing you can do in the judicial system as regards torture, as regards ill treatment. And right now, everybody's afraid. I don't think anything can be done in Turkey about all this. It's only when you leave Turkey, when you go to a free country, that you can continue your struggle for your rights. You can't do anything about this in Turkey.
I give the floor to Judge Malin-Verny.
Many thanks, Mrs. President. One question. After having been released, were you able to find out who had denounced you for the first time to the police? Did you have enemies who had something against you, and this could have brought them to denounce you to the police?
So once I was in prison, they gave me lots of documents. There were many names on these documents, and I signed these documents. And after I was released, I learned that some of these people had been arrested. But while I was in court, I said that I had been forced to sign these documents, these names, under torture, and that I had this on my conscience, and that these people had been arrested maybe because of my signature. I think this is what happened. I don't think that there was anyone who had anything against me. I had no enemies, but again, somebody had to sign a document with my name on it. Under torture, they had no other alternative but to sign this document with my name on it. That's what I think. Because there were other witnesses who'd been tortured together with me. They were with me in court, and they all said that they had been forced to sign documents under torture. And when asked why they signed these, they said, well, we would have been tortured again, because it's hell there. We have to remain alive in order to continue our struggle. So I come from a nationalist, patriotic country. We've always respected the state. So when the state says that you're guilty, then there's nothing you can do against this. They could kill you. And no one would support me. That happens. We saw what happened to Gökhan. He died under torture. And his wife is now in a foreign country. This all happens. There's no way you can express yourself in such an environment. And in the very beginning, you can't imagine it. You can't imagine that the state would be capable of doing such things. But once you go through all this, even someone like me who loves his state, who's a patriot, you're deeply disappointed. And you leave your country to continue your legal struggle outside, in foreign lands.
Now I will give the floor to Judge Van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President. Mr. Alp, sorry, my question may be a bit personal, so if you don't feel comfortable to answer it, you can say so. But how is the cancer situation? What kind of cancer did you have? What kind of treatment did you get then? And what is the situation now? Because cancer could be quite serious, and sometimes one needs surgery, sometimes chemotherapy, and all kinds of other modern treatments. Where is that situation now?
No, I can answer this. So I was sent to the Numune hospital in Ankara. The doctor understood that there was a problem. So they did an endoscopy while I was in prison, and they said that they would take a biopsy. And after they did the biopsy, they saw that I had polyps in my colon, but that they were benign, but that I should continue taking my drugs, my medication. And I'm taking my medication. Right now I don't have any problem with cancer, but I still have arrhythmia and high tension. And even though 2 or 3 years have gone over this, I'm still having nightmares. Psychologically, I'm still in prison.
Thank you very much. Now I will give the floor to Justice Bayens. Yes.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I would like, in the same vein of the former question, what is your situation today and your family? And if you could tell us a bit more about the impact that this whole experience has left, and are you, for example, able to work as a teacher, or how has that impacted your current life and being a refugee right now? Thank you.
Yes, it's very difficult to get over this, psychologically speaking. In between 1930 and 1940s Germany, I've been reading a lot of books that are about Germany between the 30s and 40s. I read Anne Frank's diary, and I keep seeing myself in all that I'm reading. And what I understood from what I read is that you have to create, you have to produce, you have to use your imagination. If you don't do this, then you stay in the past, and the past just eats you up. So right now at Munich University, I'm working on a project on the creativity of refugees. Oh, sorry, I'm not working there yet. I would like to start working there. I sent my CV, and I'm learning Germany. And if it's accepted, then I would like to start working with refugees on creativity. But right now, all I'm doing is just to be with my wife, to learn German, and I'm taking care of my children's education. That's all I'm doing for the moment. I'm not working.